men would work out here. They would get these big blocks of ice. A block of ice would weigh between 200 and 400 pounds, and the ice was put on a railroad and shipped to New York City and also Scranton at the time.
An icy history at another state park in the Poconos. Welcome to Pocono Mountains Podcast, everyone. This is the first episode of Season 5. I'm your host, Jim Hamill. We just kicked off the 8-part series exploring state parks in the Poconos in the March Pocono Mountains magazine. Hickory Run was first up and was a great listen last month on the podcast. In preparation for the next state park in the series, Tobyhanna, we dropped by on a blustery, gusty March day high atop the Pocono Plateau last week. I was amazed how many folks were out there enjoying the trails and the icy views of the lake and the dam along Route 423. I mean, it was downright cold thanks to those fierce winds. But we got to meet Justin Wade, the park manager who also oversees 2 other parks we'll visit over the coming months, Gouldsboro and Big Pocono. The story behind Tobyhanna State Park, though, in just a bit. The Poconos is a year-round destination for millions, with 2,400 square miles of mountains, forests, lakes, and rivers, with historic downtowns and iconic family resorts, plus those great state parks. It's the perfect getaway. You can always find out more at PoconoMountains.com or watch PTN, the Pocono Television Network, streaming live 24/7. Now back to the episode. Tobyhanna State Park is about 5,400 acres. It is right next to the Tobyhanna Army Depot, an active support facility for military electronics systems. And it's also a stocked lake for trout season coming up early next month in April. We'll talk with both the park manager and a longtime employee at Tobyhanna State Park, and we'll have a full story in next month's Pocono Mountains magazine. But for now, here's our full discussions with Justin and Tanya. Enjoy. So anytime you visit Tobyhanna State Park, one of the best spots to start your journey and your visit is at the park office here. And park manager Justin Wade is joining us now to talk a little bit about what people can do and how they can help you have a great time when you visit here in any season. Justin, thanks for joining us here on PTN. How many things are there for people to do here at the park?
Well, first, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do here at the park. Anything from somebody that wants to come here and be here for a day use activity, such as picnicking or swimming at our beach. Given the weather is better, swimming at our beach. We have hiking on trails. We have overnight facilities for groups. We have the campground, 140 site campground, which brings people in from all over to stay overnight here. You can enjoy at Tobyhanna State Park about 5,000 acres of mostly wooded area where you can wildlife watch, view eagles flying over the lake. You can go fishing. Hunting is open in the majority of the park as well during certain seasons. So there's a little bit for any user of the outdoors here.
And when this story goes out there to the world, we are hitting trout season too. So really, once the ice thaws, people can come out here and cast their lines and hopefully catch what is a stocked waterway, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the lake is stocked with some pretty big trout in it, and it will be stocked this year for 2025.
Very nice.
Trout season opens the first weekend of April, the first Saturday in April, and people do come here, and a pretty big crowd starts here that Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Yep.
That's an exciting time because people of all ages can fish, right? You can come out here with your grandparents, your grandkids, and really kind of experience that aspect of what the Poconos has to offer from that freshwater fishing.
Yes, absolutely. Not only all ages can fish, but all people with any ability can fish here as well. We have a ADA accessible fishing pier in the park, which is a place that a lot of people like to go to fish. I've seen little kids enjoying it. I've seen little kids out on the ice enjoying ice fishing. And then obviously throughout trout season is a big time to fish for those trout through April and May. And then there's a lot of bass and pickerel that you can fish for later in the summer.
I know you touched upon the ice fishing. The ice itself has a huge heritage here on the lake because this lake was used in a commercial way to keep goods cold in the big city
Absolutely.
eons ago. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So the railroad runs up on top of the mountain here. In a lot of these small lakes, including here, Mill Pond number 1, which is down in Tobyhanna, which is outside the park, and then Goldsboro State Park, all had ice harvesting lakes. Ice harvesting was only a thing between about 1900 and 1936 because refrigeration was invented.
Of course.
So it wasn't needed anymore. However, men would work out here. They would get these big blocks of ice. A block of ice would weigh between 200 and 400 pounds. And the ice was put on the railroad and shipped to New York City and also Scranton at the time.
That's an amazing feature that now I know there's historical associations who bring that ice harvesting back to kind of throw back to that era. Of course, before refrigeration was a thing, but back when that ice made its way out of this area to a lot of homes that then would keep a lot of food cool for, families to then, do that over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you don't think about needing today. Everybody has a freezer, everybody has a fridge in their house.
Right.
That's a relatively short period in our human history that we've had the capability of preserving things like that.
Yeah.
So it was a necessity, and the lakes up here provided the opportunity for that. A couple of things about the lakes that make them unique are they are extremely shallow, and they're higher in elevation, so it's colder up here.
Sure.
It is typically 10 to 12 degrees colder here than it is in Stroudsburg, which is only about 20 miles from here.
Right.
It's because of the elevation. Where the lake here is about 2,000 foot above sea level. And the lake has an average depth of only about 3 feet and a max depth of only about 9 feet.
Is that right?
So shallow water freezes quick, which allowed them to actually harvest ice twice throughout the winter. Because the lake would freeze, they could harvest it, and then it would freeze again, and they would harvest it again. So they would have these massive mounds of ice that would pile up along the railroads. They could put them on carts. They could send them to people's homes. They could refrigerate goods on the carts.
Mother Nature's icebox, if you will.
Pretty much, and we're feeling it a little bit today. It's pretty windy up here today. Yep, absolutely.
Justin, you've been here almost a year now. What do you? I know I was just talking to some of the staff inside. What do you hear from the visitors who come in each year or for the first time and get to experience what Tobyhanna has to offer to the public?
People just enjoy being outdoors. I don't know if Tobyhanna needs the fame to claim. Anybody going anywhere outdoors, they seem to enjoy it.
Sure.
But we have the green space to offer here. People are escaping the concrete jungles of the city. They're escaping the city busy life. They're coming here. They're enjoying a weekend. They're enjoying the sun hitting them. They're enjoying hearing the birds chirp.
Yeah.
And that's what people come out here for and enjoy.
In April, too, when this segment airs on Pocono Mountains Magazine, we're also celebrating Earth Day. And so not just this park, but all the state park systems and the Poconos in general really has that connection with nature and that preservation, conservation aspect too. You want people to come in here and understand this is a very valuable resource that you want to maintain for generations to come. What is that connection to that Earth Day and to that conservation mindset that you want people to take from?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on the head when you said generations to come. That's what we do as the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources with the Bureau of State Parks. We're here to preserve this land, but we're also here to educate and teach people at the same time how to treat the outdoors and respect the outdoors so it is here for that person's enjoyment and their children's children is what I say. And with Earth Day, it's a great time to hone in on the need to save these green spaces. It is one of the best cures for people that are having mental health issues. You come out into a green space and you automatically feel better. You feel rejuvenated. You feel alive because you're put in with all this stuff here. So Earth Day connects all that, and it goes right in line with what I do in my career and what we're doing as a department.
Justin, another unique aspect of Tobyhanna State Park is that it's directly adjacent to the Tobyhanna Army Depot, which has a long history here of military testing. So visitors might find some signage around, alerting to them of things that they might come across.
Yes. Our signage talks about the unexploded ordinances. They are artillery shells that could be potentially scattered through certain areas of the park. It is extremely, extremely unlikely for anybody to find one of these unexploded ordnances. If you stay on the trail, you stay in the day use areas, you stay in the campground, your chances of finding them are almost zero.
Right.
But like you said, there's a long history of the Army Depot here. They tested artillery shells. They tested artillery and prototype artillery from early 1900s to up into World War II.
Sure.
And then in 1949 is when the federal government, the Army, turned this property over to the Commonwealth, and Tobyhanna State Park was created and established in 1949.
Interesting history there. Well, the beauty of this thing is that we're going to be speaking to Justin not this once. He also manages Goldsboro State Park. He manages Big Pocono State Park. Those will be coming up on our 8-part series here of exploring state parks in the Poconos. But for Tobyhanna, is there anything else that you think our viewers or listeners should know about?
I just say respect it, like we were talking about, but enjoy it. You come up here, you enjoy your time up here.
You're hit with a leaf, right? That'll go in the blooper reel.
That's the wind comes and hits me. All right, yeah. So yeah, I say enjoy it, and respect that nature, and get out on a trail. Stay active and stay healthy. That's what I say.
It is one of those parks too, where it might not be as daunting of a big trip to, out into Boulder Field, down some Shades of Death trail, that we just encompassed in Hickory Run. But here, this is more of like, maybe if people haven't visited a state park before, this is one of those first introductions maybe that they could have here at Tobyhanna.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great place to, maybe experiment camping for the first time.
Yeah.
Our campground has a nice restroom facility, and it's a more remote campground. You can get right to the lake. There's water access. A quiet, shallow lake, which is good for boating.
Yeah.
Good for first timers, maybe on a kayaker. You can rent at our boat concessionaire, who does have kayaks, canoes, paddle boats, paddle boards, and rowboats and powered rowboats, electric motor only.
Okay.
So a lot of different options there at the boat concessionaire that it's easy. If you've never done it before, come out here and experience it for the first time.
Justin Wade, park manager, not just at Tobyhanna, but Goldsboro and Big Pocono State Park. Thanks for having us.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We also spoke with Tanya Doney, who has been working at Tobyhanna for 30 years. Tobyhanna State Park, 30 years.
It'll be 31 in May.
31 years. How's that been for you? Like, just give me a glimpse into like what it's been like to work at Tobyhanna all those years,
Well, when I started here, I was 19 years old, and it was a little nerve-wracking to be having a state job at a state park. It seemed kind of important, and I just was seasonal at that time, and I came back year after year because I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed working with the people, the visitors, and saw a lot of changes through the years. And then in 2015, I was promoted to the administrative assistant classification that I hold now.
Yeah.
And that is full-time rather than seasonal.
Good for you. What a park, though. It's got a lot of aspects to it that keep people coming back year after year after year.
Absolutely. The lake, the picnic area, the campground is very popular in the summer. People have been coming here. A man said it was his 50th time here because he came here when he was a baby. And every year he has come back. There's a lot of regulars. There's a lot of first-time campers or first-time visitors. There's a lot for the park to offer. It teaches, by camping, it teaches you, how you could live in the outdoors if you needed to, and to use other things you might not need, not to depend on the electronics and the computers, and just enjoy nature and what it has to offer, the wildlife viewings. Disconnecting from the real world, to say. Enjoying, learning about different trees and animals through our nature programs. Going out and relaxing on a boat with our boat rental concession, just taking a walk around the lake on a path that has been, designated for hiking or biking, just enjoying the quietness of the park and the tranquility.
Yeah, I love this part too that you were mentioning before too, that, some people are very, they have a lot of ownership over their traditional camping spots, right? Like they want to have the same ones every time.
Absolutely. There are a few really nice sites, and people want them all the time. But specifically, they might have a favorite site, and they will reserve it 11 months in advance because that's the limit that you could reserve every year. And they'll come back. And over the years, I found also that the people that come, a few times a month, they meet each other and they become friendly with each other. And over the years, they become close. Their families become close, and they, develop relationships like that as well.
And you even get to witness them grow up here at the park.
Absolutely. I've seen kids grow up, and it amazes me when they come in here, and I think it's their father that I'm looking at because, it happens so quickly.
It does.
Yes.
Tanya, perfect. Anything else?
Just state parks are a wonderful place to visit. Every Pennsylvania state park is different and has uniqueness to it. And just, visiting a park and finding out what it has to offer would be really recommended. It's a really neat thing to realize what's right in your backyard that you may have not noticed before.
Tobyhanna State Park. Head to PoconoMountains.com to learn more about that state park or any others. We have 8 of them all across the 4 counties of the Poconos. Thanks for listening to Pocono Mountains Podcast in our 5th season now. We'll have a new episode each week highlighting lots of the fun things you can experience while you're visiting the Poconos. Subscribe and leave a review and or comment on whatever platform you listen. Now you've got the Poconos in the palm of your hand.
For places to stay and shop.
And stories about the Pocono Mountains.
Go to PoconoTelevision.com to download the app and get the information you need for your visit with us.
We're back. Thanks for listening to Pocono Mountains Podcast. I'm Jim Hamill. Now for a Pocono Mountains Podcast Extra. Recently, our Caitlin Johnson was welcomed on the Destination Marketing Podcast to talk about her insights in social media and likening strategy to the timeless Golden Girls. The hit TV show resonated so much that Caitlin presented to our Tourism Summit in 2024 about the ways to approach marketing your business or destination with lessons from the show. Here's a listen to part of that podcast. Thanks to Adam Stoker and his team for sharing this with us. Give them a follow and listen when you're able. Enjoy.
More about how it ties in with the Golden Girls.
Yes. So when I would go to these shoots with the PCN team, I would go and create content because that was my primary job, was a content creator for our social media. And the particularly small business owners would always ask me questions because as a small business owner, you're not wearing multiple hats. You're probably wearing all the hats. And social media is one of those hats that a small business owner wears for their own business. So they would ask me questions about social media and advice. And I would always say, okay, well, let's, take a look at your analytics and we'll work from there. And that was the first connection I had because I made the connection with analytics to the character Dorothy, who is the substitute school teacher. She highly values knowledge and education. And I thought, oh, that's kind of like Dorothy. And then that's how it evolved from there. So each Golden Girl has their own lesson, and I call them golden lessons, on what they can teach you about social media. And I made this particularly for small business owners because you are wearing all those hats and, social media is very overwhelming to a social media professional sometimes, let alone someone who's just, it's just one of many jobs that they do. I presented this initially at our Tourism Day conference that we have, where we have breakout sessions. And this was one of the sessions that I taught. And instead of focusing on what was constantly changing with social media, I decided to focus on what has been consistent. And that's how I came up with these golden lessons. And it really fits surprisingly very well with each Golden Girl and how their personalities are. So I can use this as a tool for teaching our members and teaching these small businesses within our destination. And, it adds to that responsibility that DMOs have to foster and help, your businesses within your destination so they can grow and thrive as well. So
I love it. I love it.
started.
Let's go through then the 4 lessons, right? And you mentioned that Dorothy was a substitute school teacher. She, knowledge was very important to her, and so you tied analytics to Dorothy. Do you want to expand on that a little bit, or do you want to dive into the other 3?
No, we can expand on Dorothy. We'll start off with her. So her key lesson is to be knowledgeable. And like I said, that is learning your analytics. And I went into further detail about where to even find your analytics. And sometimes social media platforms, they like to trick us by calling them different words between the platforms. So I talked about that. And to use your analytics to create goals for yourself. Because if I tell a small business owner, oh, you should really post to your Instagram 4 times a week, that's not on that's not on anyone's bingo card. That's a lot. So what we do is we break things down into specific goals of what they really want to achieve. And I use the SMART method, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based. And we went over that and how you can use your analytics to meet your goals and do check-ins on your goals. And I also used creating a content calendar to help you plan out your content. So it's not overwhelming as a small business member. And you can use a content calendar to do a check so you're not just posting on the fly, and it makes it easier. And we went over the various platforms that there are to do that.
Okay, so Dorothy, if she was running our social media today, she'd want us to use analytics. She'd want us to set goals using the SMART method. And then she would want us to create a content calendar to make sure that our activities are organized and planned. Is that a fair summary of that?
Absolutely. And she would make sure that everything is spell checked. Absolutely. Dorothy certainly would. The next golden girl we have is Sophia, who is Dorothy's mother. She was very witty, and she often tells the girls stories about her childhood living in Sicily. And Sophia has this catchphrase that she uses throughout the Golden Girls series where she says, "Picture it, Sicily, 1922. So Sophia's lesson is to be a consistent storyteller. So what we learned from Sophia is things like using keywords and SEO. And I presented it in a way with like a mini case study from one of our hotels that had just opened in the Poconos, the Swiftwater. And we talked about using keywords to be specific and niche down to what your business is. So if you wanted your business to be found in 5 words or less, what 5 words would you use? And we showed how TikTok algorithm works with using SEO and to look things up. And, TikTok will take your video and classify it based off the data that it receives. So you have to feed it the data that you want it to have. You have to give it its best option to tell TikTok what you want it to be. So that's what we used for our case study. So we can see that there's, the SEO that came up for this particular video.
I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't resist opening up the presentation so that everybody could see. And because even your use of the Golden Girls throughout the presentation, it's so fun to, like, when we saw Sophia and her facial expression here. I remember seeing this show as a kid, and you kind of captured some great photos that really they bring it home, I guess I should say. Yes. And so you really talk about using SEO and using some niche content on your social channels, and you use this Swiftwater Hotel case study. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. So tell me a little bit about how that fits, that case study.
Yeah, so I showed the original copy that I used, and this was last May. So it's that was like what was trending at the time a little bit too. So I used the original copy that I used. As a practice, we only use 3 to 5 hashtags. Just to educate your members. You want to have specific tactics that you use to attract the visitors that you want using your analytics. So using Dorothy still, but niche it down so you can, get the specific people that you want. So that's what we did. We niched it down, and then we used very keywords in our copy. And then if you look at the middle presentation, it came up with Swiftwater Hotel Pocono. So that's what TikTok classified this video as. And then I took it a step further and I just typed that into a search on TikTok so they could see these are all the videos that came up under it. So I just further drove the point that you need to be very specific with what you use, and every word that you have counts on there, especially with these SEO based platforms, and how to narrow it down and how to describe your business and niche it down.
I actually, Caitlin, I think this is a really critical piece of the conversation because when most people think about SEO, they think about Google, because there was a time when Google controlled 90% of search volume. But what's happened over the last several years is there are some massive search engines who have expanded and taken major market share from Google, but we don't think about it that way because they're social platforms. The volume of searches that happen on TikTok is massive and has taken major, like I said, search market share from Google. Podcast platforms. I mean, the way people have found my show largely has been searching destination marketing on the podcast platforms, and my show pops up, right? And so the fact that you are looking at these social platforms like a search platform, I think that's a paradigm shift that a lot of destination marketers need to experience and understand. Is you also need to think about search on these platforms. And you've got on the Swiftwater Hotel, I said it the first time, this time without three mistakes, trying to say it. TikTok will tell you, and this is why I love what you did here. TikTok will tell you what the likely search term would be to get to this video. And then you said, okay, let me take that search term and I'll plug it into TikTok and see what else shows up. And now you're starting to understand how that algorithm works. And so anyway, I think it's a really important thing for everybody listening to understand, is that search engine optimization is no longer just a Google function, and you need to look at search engine optimization as if each of these platforms was a search engine that you need to optimize for.
Yes. And even specifically Gen Z, and it's trickling into millennials as well, they use platforms like TikTok as a search engine even more than they use Google. So that's something to keep in mind as well, especially when they're planning for travel. You know, you don't want to read a Google review, you want to see a video about it. So that's something that's really important for any destination marketing strategy.
Yep. And I would say especially with travel. I mean, it's fascinating because as I was planning my trip to Hawaii, TikTok went crazy and showed me just this endless supply of Maui specific travel videos. And really, in fact, there was a hike we went on called the Waihi Ridge Trail. And it literally, if I hadn't seen the TikTok, I wouldn't have even known that trail exists. And so it's a great example of making sure that you're optimized for those searches so that when people are consuming that type of content, you are popping up.
Yes. And I did further explain too that the goal of any social media platform is to keep you on there as long as possible. So in order to do that, it's going to show you in your algorithm, and I explained what your algorithm is a little as well. It's going to show you things that you want to see to keep you entertained. So that's, you know, something that's also really important as well to keep in mind as you plan your social strategy.
Yep. And the funny thing is now those videos pop up for me and I'm just sad, but I still watch the whole thing. but yeah, that's the goal with the algorithm, right? Is as people interact with content, it's going to show them more and more of that content. I think you're spot on. I think it's great advice. What about Rose? Tell me about Rose.
Rose. Okay, so Rose is played by Betty White. She is our farm girl from Minnesota. And she's very proud of her Scandinavian heritage, so much so that she just brings up these funny Scandinavian sounding words. And Rose has this line that is just hysterical. I actually have a magnet on it on my fridge, but she is talking about baking this ancient Viking cake. And she says, oh, but I modernized it to the 80s. And she's talking about it, but I'm not one to blow my own Vertugenflurgen. And I love that line, and I
can't believe you said that so clearly, because I was looking at that word on the screen going, how do you say that?
The amount of times I said Vertugenflurgen, it's a fun word. It's good. It's such a funny line, and it made me think about, being authentically you. That is what Rose's lesson is to be authentic, and not to blow your own Vertjugenflurgen on social media. At the time when I was preparing for this presentation, I was reading a book by Donald Miller called Building a Brand Story. And he talks about how every movie has this basic plot line where you have a hero who's trying to overcome an obstacle, and that could be a villain, and they are guided by some sort of guide who's in some sort of form. And every movie has that format. And he then goes on to say, as marketers, you need to think of yourself, most people think of themselves as the hero. You need to think of yourself as the guide and your customers or your visitors as the hero, and you are guiding them to what they want. You are helping them, not the other way around. So I really love that concept, and it just fits so perfectly with this. So that's something that I bring up because no one wants to be sold to ever, but especially on social media. You know what I mean? How many times do we skip past those ads, or as soon as we feel like it's inauthentic, nope, that's it. So, and authenticity is becoming very important on social media. So that is Rose, is to be authentically you. And you can do this by practicing. Okay.
And it's getting snuffed out when you're not authentic very quickly.
In
fact, one of the things I get a kick out of is when there's videos that have gone viral, a lot of brands will try to jump into the comments and engage with it and try to connect with the audience. And I always, especially on TikTok, I see the comment below every irrelevant brand comment is, "Get out of here, brand. We don't want you here, brand." And it's crazy because to me, that's exactly what you're saying is like, if you're, and I'm not going to try to say what Betty White said here because I don't think I'm capable of it. I'm going to have to practice in the mirror. If I can't say the Swiftwater Hotel, I definitely can't say this word. But you're so right about the importance of authenticity, because if you are overtly selling or trying to insert yourself in conversations you don't belong in, the audience can see right through it.
Right, exactly. So I mentioned using social listening practices for your content. There's of course there's so many AI tools that you can use to help with that and aid with that, to find out what your audience is interested in, what they want.
Let's give the audience a couple of those social listening tools, if you don't mind. What are the favorite ones that you use?
Absolutely. You can use Answer the Public, which will give you the generated list that people search for. If you give a few keywords, it'll give the list of, if I said Pocono Mountains, it'll come up as what to do in the Pocono Mountains, when's the best time to visit. So it comes up with the top searches relating to the words Pocono Mountains. So that's something that's really important to use. You can also just type in, for us, for example, just type in Poconos and see what comes up, and just use that as well. And we've also done things where we have had a little bit more interaction with our audience, where we would post to Facebook and just ask a question, what's your favorite thing to do in the Poconos in the winter? And that's great for, one, engagement, and also two, it just generates some content ideas for us as well of what to post. So it's always great to just connect with your audience and just to be authentic about it as well. And another great way to do this is user-generated content, or UGC. Yeah. People see themselves in your destination, and they're basically advocates for your destination, posting what a great time that they're having. So that's something to definitely utilize into your social media strategy as well.
Is there a tool for UGC that you like?
Yes, we use CrowdRiff. We like that a lot. That's a great one. I'm sure there's others out there as well. I basically explained to, if you don't have this in your budget, look at who tagged photos of you and just get permission. And then people love that, especially when they're posted by a brand or their photos reposted. I know as a social media nerd like myself, I love it whenever that happens. So that's something that you can do too on any budget.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't need if you can't afford the software tool, it's just a little bit more manual exercise.
Marketing the Poconos and your business with Golden Girls, Blanche, Rose, Dorothy, and Sophia. We hope you enjoyed Pocono Mountains Podcast. Please remember to subscribe anywhere podcasts are available. Come visit us in the Pocono Mountains. Plan your trip today.